Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the greatest threat to democracy, which is pro-government extremism. It's not coming from evil, extreme, far right. It's not coming from the more anarchic side of the leftoids. They're very confused people. Most of the left are authoritarian. They don't realize how major economic bureaucracy requires more authority. They don't quite get that, but we'll forget that at the moment and focus just on what I would call the growing authoritarianism of the liberal movement, or neocons. Neocon Inc., liberals, what's the big difference? There's not really much of one other than the letter after their name sometimes. Pro-government extremism is probably the biggest threat that we face. There are plenty of microcosmic elements of it. The attempt to censorship the internet is rooted in that. The fear-mongering that we get, honk honk, with regards to certain medical subtopics we won't mention on a YouTube video, that comes from the basic premise as well. I saw a Legacy Media article 2 days ago talking about how in order to solve medical problems we needed to give the government more power. Now, a rational person, of course, would say maybe that didn't work this time and probably wouldn't work next time. A rational person with at least a casual review of history of their own country or any other will say the biggest threat people potentially can face often is from their own government or from some other interior group. It's not those guys over there that have a different flag. It's not this public edifice that has no legal power. It's not this group of individuals that maybe they get violent but they can't operate with legal impunity. It's the government, or the state at large, or some other subgroup that it is empowered, or some other group that dispenses legal authority. It doesn't have to be an elected state. It can be a dictator. It can be a theocracy, oligarchic, technocratic council of wise old men, or whatever. They are potentially the biggest abusers of the public. Yes, they could also potentially be the biggest saviors of the public. If they have enough latitude, certainly they can respond to a crisis more easily. Do they do this particularly well? No, they don't. Throughout history, unfortunately, most of their big moves are abusive. In retrospect, most people understand this, but there is a growing chunk of society, it's probably not a majority, but it's a considerable number, that have no retrospective capabilities, it seems, or at the very least, they wait and wait and wait to use them, and so they'll take any form of big government abuse or statist abuse in the meantime, in the here and now, and only when other people that are more prone to ask questions, only when a chorus of them begins asking what the hell's going on, do they join that chorus, just like they joined the authoritarians prior, like lemmings. Now, before I get deeper into this, because I think that segment of society is a problem, and pro-government extremism is absolutely a cancer that we need to crush in society completely and do away with and constrain much more massively. Keep in mind that down below, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind, I make exclusive material every single day that goes on all those sites. It doesn't get onto YouTube because their algorithms abuse me. If I make 2 videos, I get like 20% less views on each video I make. If you make 3, at some point, the more videos you make, the less views you get. It's very strange, the system they've decided to go with. It basically kneecaps people like me who like to have discrete topics for their videos. Yes, I know, YouTube, you prefer live shows, or you prefer people who do hastily edited 15-second TikTok-style clips with a lot of bright colors and do that once a week and think this gives them fame or clout or will become a main source of income for them. But there are some of us that are from the old school. You know, those of us who built the site. But anyway, we'll get past this. Here's the problem. Right now, when you use the term extremism, effectively it's a form of propaganda. Typically, what people mean by extremism is a group that is violent or potentially given over to violence. It's often the latter, and often they've been fed the line extremism or fanaticism or something relatively synonymous by groups that are themselves promoting extremism. So, I would look at CNN and the Biden admin and their various allies. I would look at the New York Times. I would look at MSNBC. I would look at the DNC. Most of the RNC too, just to be clear. We're not going to be partisan when we levy this criticism. It's just a matter of in and out partisan politics, I think, at some point. When I look at the sort of things that they intend to do, when I look at the plethora of issues that they've taken up, the elimination of all human borders to the point where everyone will effectively be a slave to the global elite because they'll no longer have any form of constraints on their own money movement. You'll still face constraints. When you travel, you have to wear a hazmat suit. They have a private jet. You'll notice that there's a big difference between the rich and powerful and everyone else in virtually every subject. Another reason to constrain power much more. Another reason why taxing the billionaires will never happen. Not under the current incarnation of government in the Western civilization. I would look at the ideas they have, the open borders. You have fundamentally a soft-on-crime approach for most communities while they're militarizing the police that patrol Beverly Hills and stuff. You'll notice in Canada, when the truckers show up, here come the Bearcats. At all other moments, they send a couple of Mounties and a two-legged dog, and they call this criminal justice. This is the Canadian capability of policing crime, usually. When they go after maple syrup theft, of course, maybe that's not so major that they need to bring the Bearcat, but you never know. That maple syrup's worth a lot of money. They might have bought a flamethrower recently, so look out. When we look at the differential with policies regarding the lower, middle, even upper middle class and the 1% of the 1%. When we look at the differential in education, your kids will do remote only and they're taught Marxist lies called critical race theory. Their kids get tutored and go to private schools or are homeschooled. So unless you're an out-and-out separatist like a fucking goddamn hippie or a Amish knockoff and you homeschool your kids, if you're in the 99%, your kids are getting a subpar education. When we look at all of the things that they promote, I would call that extremism. They want more taxes for more horse shit, despite the fact that virtually nothing the government applies itself to is working. Our foreign policy record is abysmal over the last half century. It's just wasting money over and over again and using propaganda. It's butcherous and insane as well. The welfare policies are not uplifting the poor. Government intrusions into every private marketplace slow them down and make them more obtuse and more costly, to the point where until the last few years, when the government's been trying to regulate and tax the internet, tech basically was the big takeoff. That was where you could still make it. I would argue that we're on the cusp of another tech revolution with NFTs and blockchains and things of that nature, and decentralized technology and better VPNs and new tech in general and payment processors. We're building a brand new infrastructure that doesn't quite resemble the old internet at all, and I think that that's wonderful. Government will corrupt that too. Oh wait, it's already trying to do that. It's effectively already going after Bitcoin and all the earlier wave crypto stuff. They're already trying to hyper-regulate. They're already trying to get banks to get in on it so they can control who can and can't partake in modern commerce. That's extremism. Depriving people of the ability to express themselves for an opinion which is not otherwise inciting harm or defamatory or something is extremism. Wanting people to have less firearms because you just don't trust them while your government buys military gear for the IRS is extremism. When the government wants to lie to your kids and their kids go to the private school where they'll graduate, they'll be trilingual and have 5 or 6 business contracts lined up because they're 14 going on 40, that's extremism. It's an extreme divergence. There's extreme authoritarianism. It's extremely goddamn expensive. It astonishes me that any self-professed conservative would support these things. I think that's what we need to ridicule. I think that those are the opinions that we need to be debating. The problem is, of course, if you look, and this is, by the way, totally coincidental, the multi-billionaires of the communications industry that you call the tech firms, what are they trying to censor? That sort of opinion. That's about all. Peace out.